Hey guys, I am back with the Great Airport Mystery, the Hardy Boys, and we are on Chapter 10. Hopefully this one will be better than Chapter 9 with all the distractions. Frank rushed over to Joe. His brother was staring at something in a flower bed. Frank glanced down and was astonished at what he saw. There, deeply impressed in the soft dirt, were two footprints. The instep of the right foot was narrower than that of the left. The prints appeared to be duplicates of those the boys had discovered in the concrete of the stand-wide hangar. Clint Hill's footprint. "What do you make of it?" Joe asked his brother excitedly. "Could Clint Hill be alive?" "The reports certainly don't indicate it," Frank replied, "but if he is, why would he be sneaking around like this?" "I wonder if the whole thing is a hoax," Joe said. "Maybe Lance Peterson is using us to cover up a crooked deal he and Hill are involved in. They feel safe because they didn't count on our picking up the footprints clue in the hangar. Someone tried hard to keep us from seeing the prints. Maybe it was Hill himself." Puzzled, the boys decided to have another talk with Peterson. As they were about to leave, a window in the house was flung open and a woman poked her head out. "What are you doing here?" she shouted. Startled, the boys looked up. "We want to see Mr. Zim. Is he at home?" Frank replied coolly. "Then why didn't you come to the door instead of prowling around out there?" demanded the woman in a rasping, unpleasant tone. "I'm Mrs. Zim. What do you want with my husband?" The Hardys realized that they could not reveal to Mrs. Zim their reason for being there. Perhaps she was in the plot with her husband. On the other hand, she might not know anything about his mysterious behavior, nor have heard any talk about Clint Hill's ghost. In that case, the boys did not want to upset her. "We're working on a job for Lance Peterson," Joe ad-libbed, "and we wanted to ask Mr. Zim some questions." "He left for work about an hour ago," his wife said indignantly. Then we'll see him there," Frank told her. She demanded that the boys leave at once. Glad to get away, they did not argue and returned to their car. Frank started for the stand-wide hangar. "I could see by her face that Mrs. Zim didn't know whether to believe us or not," Frank commented. Joe agreed. "I hope that when she tells Zim we were here, it doesn't put him on guard." "It won't make much of a difference one way or the other," Frank observed. "Either Zim knows we suspect him of something, which means our prowling around wouldn't surprise him, or else he might really believe we came out to ask him some routine questions." When the boys arrived at the airport, they went at once to the stand-wide hangar. Lance Peterson's office door was locked. As Frank and Joe strolled back across the hangar, they saw Jerry Madden come out of the operations room. "Hey, I got a message for you," he called to the Hardys. "Mr. Allen has been trying to find you. He wants you to call him right away." Frank asked Jerry if he knew where Peterson had gone. Jerry said no. Peterson had taken the day off. Frank went to telephone Mr. Allen. "We are sending a large shipment of parts containing platinum to the Sun Plat Tool Company in California tomorrow morning," the executive told him. "Our company cargo plane will make the delivery. Lance Peterson and Aaron Lieber will be flying it. Because of the great value of this shipment and the trouble we've been having as an extra precaution, I would like you boys to follow in another plane. Can you do it?" The Hardys excitedly agreed. "Don't worry about arranging for a pilot and plane. We'll handle it ourselves," Frank said. A short time later, he and Joe were in the operations room of Ace Air Service discussing the trip with Randy Watson. "The stand-wide cargo plane is a pretty fast ship," Randy said. "We don't have any equipment at Ace that would keep up with her. I'll have to lease a special plane." Go ahead and make the arrangements, Frank told him, but keep it quiet. On the way home, the Hardys stopped at the police headquarters to ask them to check the license plate number of the car Joe had seen Lieber jump into. Detective Lieutenant Obles, a determined but pleasant man, sent the number to the motor vehicle department by police teletype. In a little less than an hour, Lieutenant Obles called the boys at their home. Here it is, the officer announced. The report says the car belongs to a Mr. Art Rodax. Frank thanked the detective and then hung up. Art Rodax, our former boss, he exclaimed, repeating the news to Joe. Good night! He's a pal of Lieber? Joe cried out. Well, we're rounding up quite a group of suspects. Hoping to turn up another clue, the boys began calling all the camera stores listed in the telephone book. Not one of the shops reported having seen the stolen camera. At 5 o'clock, Mr. Freeman called Frank. The camera shop owner said that the developed pictures had just arrived. Mr. Williams, the name under which the pictures were left, has already phoned, and he's coming by for them. We'll be right over, said Frank. If Williams shows up first, try to stall. Okay. When the boys drove up to the camera shop, they saw a large, burly man who seemed to be arguing with Mr. Freeman. That isn't Zim, observed Joe. Maybe he really does have a friend named Williams, and he was delivering the rolls of film for him. Possibly, Frank agreed. Then again, it might be all part of a clever plan to throw us off the track. The boys decided to demand a chance to inspect the films. As they entered the shop, Mr. Freeman turned to them with an air of relief. This is Mr. R.C. Williams, he said, indicating his customer. Then he turned back to the man. These boys believe that at least some of these pictures belong to them. What? Shouted Williams. That's crazy. Then you won't mind if we look at the prints, Frank said politely. Touch my pictures, Williams bellowed, and I'll sue every one of you. Mr. Freeman looked hesitant. He was thinking that perhaps the Hardys were being a bit hasty. At the thought of being involved in a lawsuit, he began to hedge. Maybe we have no right to ask Mr. Williams to, he began. We'll take the entire responsibility, Frank interrupted. Mr. Williams can show us the pictures himself. We won't touch them. Williams protested strongly. But seeing that the boys were determined not to let him out of the shop without seeing the pictures, he ripped open the big envelope, peered in, selected a few prints, and scattered them on the counter. None of the pictures belonged to the Hardys, they admitted. There, Williams sneered. You see, you guys ought to be thrown in jail. He quickly gathered up the prints and stuffed them back in the envelope. How much do I owe you? He snapped at Mr. Freeman. Just a minute, Frank said coldly. We want to see all the pictures. Get out of my way, Williams shouted. The shop owner, now more suspicious of Williams himself, offered to call the police. But at the word police, Williams paled. You won't have to do that, he blurted. Reluctantly, he reached into the package and displayed several more prints. I said we want to see all of them, Frank demanded. That's all there is, Williams insisted. Joe reached out and seized the envelope. Shaking it vigorously, he spilled more prints onto the counter. The boys were elated to find that their suspicions were justified. Among the pictures were several aerial views they had taken. Suddenly, Williams let fly with his fist. He caught Mr. Freeman under the chin, and the shop owner slumped down behind the counter. Williams then whirled around and rushed the boys, with his head down and his arms flailing. Frank and Joe, taken off guard, skidded on the highly polished floor and went down. Williams grabbed the pictures in his large fist and crammed them hastily into his pocket. As the boys sprang to their feet, they saw Williams fleeing towards the rear exit of the shop. And that is the end of chapter 10.